Welcome back to Crusader Shorts. Today we'll be discussing the Star Wars prequel films and why they're actually good films. Before beginning this video and discussion, I will first note that everyone is entitled to your own opinion, and I do not believe any of my opinions or ideals presented in the video are correct or the truth. They are my views and opinions, and I can respect other people's as well. First, I will mention that there is a bandwagon culture upon opinions. This takes place when somebody cannot form their own opinion, or they want to feel accepted, or do not wish to face criticism, so they jump on the bandwagon per se, or adopt opinions of others that may not fall in line with their own, if they've even formed one. Now, I will not go so far as to say everyone does this, no. There are plenty of people who dislike the prequels for their own reasons, and I accept that, and will not criticise you or hate you for it. This is fine. Moving on, so I'm going to address a few popular reasons people dislike the Star Wars prequel films, and give my opinion on each point. Number 1. Midichlorians. Midichlorians are basically organic microscopic life forms that exist in the Star Wars universe, beings that reside in the cells of living organisms in the galaxy. The concept of this is that the Force spoke or flowed through these beings to the host. This concept would allow Force-sensitive individuals who had a high midichlorian count to adopt the powers of the Force. Anakin Skywalker, or Darth Vader as we know him, as he would later be known, was the chosen one in the Star Wars arc, and thus had the highest midichlorian count, apparently possessing over 20,000 of the organisms. Sure, the ideal of the Force being like magic and mystical is a great concept, and it is interesting to see a space story with heroes wielding mystical powers that we do not have the answers to. But I beg to differ. Sure, Star Wars being science fiction, you could argue that the primary word to take notice of here is the word fiction. The story clearly isn't true and shouldn't be based upon any facts or theories. However, being someone who likes lore and reading into characters and things, I must say I appreciate an actual reason or concept being given for the origin of the Force, and how individuals become Force sensitive. Disney, whether they plan to play things safe to please the masses, or whether they just want to reforge Star Wars based upon mostly only their ideals, have scrapped the midichlorian story plot from the Star Wars universe. This is fair play, however the prequels still do exist as films, however much they wish to act like they never happened, and remember Star Wars Clone Wars are still canon to the Star Wars story as well as Rebels, which all connect through some way to the prequel films and their characters, with some characters such as Darth Maul originating from the prequels alone and referencing his apparent death in Episode 1 once he returned in the Clone Wars. The film still exists and the midichlorian story is still spoke about by Qui-Gon Jinn and Yoda. So how can the film still be a thing, but apparently the midichlorian plot isn't canon, when it's clearly still in the films that they still use some of the plot from? Number 2. Jar Jar Binks. Love him or hate him, I honestly believe George Lucas probably thought of Jar Jar as a way to appeal to the child audience that the new films were targeted at. I don't hate the character, but I can agree Jar Jar can get a bit irritating at some points, so I can't argue with any opinions on this one. However, I must state that nobody can hate the films due to Jar Jar alone. Anyways, moving on. Number 3, perhaps the most controversial and most common opinion of people's, is number 3, green screen and the overuse of CGI. So, green screen and the use of CGI. Oh my, this is a great topic to cover. So, first of all, I mentioned that the YouTuber Freddie Wong made a great video that contributed to the discussion on CGI, and I recommend checking that video out to get more of a perspective on this topic. This video is called Why CG Sucks Except It Doesn't. First, I must state that CGI isn't really the demon everyone makes it out to be. In fact, I will admit the original films had great settings that brought the true belief factor to the world and made it almost like it could exist. However, the story can't just be based in deserts alone, or realistic locations of course. If George Lucas wanted to set the world in a large metropolis type city such as Coruscant, how would this be achieved without the use of CGI? It would be improbable. Nowhere in the world looks like Coruscant does at its current stage. However, this isn't necessarily true. A city like Coruscant could be set or shot in a place like Japan. However, CGI is sometimes a less expensive method of bringing worlds to life with impressive visuals that could save budget whilst maintaining a great look nonetheless. With all the complaining about CGI and how Star Wars should go back to its practical effects, scrapping CGI and the like, let's put things into perspective. People may complain about the overuse of CGI in Star Wars, but we must come to the point that the majority of sequences, although touched up in CGI, aren't all green screen based, but also organic. Many of your favourite places are at least some of the most impressive in the forms of Naboo, as an example, or organic and real locations that have been shot in. These are real places in the world. Not all of the film locations have actually been shot in CG. Whether you like them or not, some scenes, like the scenes on the volcanic planet Mustafar during the intense clash between Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker, could not have been made without the use of CGI. The only fully organic and practical way of shooting the film would be impossible without the use of CGI or real lava, and still replicating the result without CG is completely unrealistic. People believe CGI is ruining the film industry. More importantly to them, they say it ruined their Star Wars. The truth is that CG is getting better and better. Perhaps CGI is better now than it was during the prequel films, but we must appreciate that the majority of the CGI in the prequels still looks good. Remember, no CG could be as poor as the CGI in The Mummy Returns. My opinion on visual effects is like my opinion on video games. Unless they're truly terrible and seem like they're from a cartoon in a real-world looking film, they don't mind me too much. The majority of Star Wars' CG looks realistic enough and blends in fine with the environment. Notice I said the majority and not all of it. However, like with games, if the storytelling is up to scratch, the CG should complement it, not be all end-all to the film. So, the majority of CGI in Star Wars is visible to the naked eye. This is true. But in films, not just Star Wars, there is so much CGI material that you do not realise or notice is in the shot. Things shot in organic locations have been modified or edited with special effects. Whether it's colour correction, matte painting, and the inclusion of edited artificial backdrops placed into real shots or other methods, CGI is always there, even in the newest of Star Wars films, Rogue One and The Force Awakens. Number 4. The overuse of the lightsabers. Yes, this is actually a nitpick by a lot of people. It seems as if lightsabers are apparently overused in the newer films, and there's barely any combat without them. People's opinions are apparently that George Lucas believes people only love Star Wars for the lightsabers. Well, for a fact that might actually surprise some, Jedi and Sith use lightsabers apart from the Force, and this is the main weapon or means of defense. Of course, lightsabers play a huge role in Star Wars. We must take into perspective that the original films were based upon Luke Skywalker, who was in a very different predicament to the characters presented in the prequel films. First of all, there were few surviving Jedi in these eras. Knowledge of the Force via the light side was very scarce, and Jedi were small in numbers. The only Jedi presented to us at these times were Yoda and Obi-Wan. Both characters are extremely old and had been in hiding from the Empire and the Sith for many years. They'd been hiding, not had long to re-hone their skills or maintain their power and training. Their primary connection was the Force. Especially being older, it would be unrealistic to see Obi-Wan somersaulting over Darth Vader's head and doing spins. This is why both sets of trilogies had different styles, and we should respect them both. We must also take into consideration that Luke Skywalker was the main hero in the original trilogy. He begins as a farmer boy and progresses into the Rebel Alliance, and was initially part of the Imperial Training Academy to become part of the Empire. All he knows at the early stages is spaceships, guns, and training in military forms. Until he learns of Obi-Wan and slowly begins to learn the Force and the use of a lightsaber, it is centered around him being a real hero and taking down the Death Star via these means, rather than fighting with a lightsaber so much. Both films have different styles, and the fighting forms and the use of lightsabers entirely depend on the main characters and their circumstances. Number 5. My final point. So, number 5 is George Lucas. Many people think George Lucas is some kind of bad guy in the film industry that's irresponsible, and many are thankfully isn't part of the creative process anymore. In fact, this is quite insane for many reasons. First of all, it is entirely probable that Lucas was fed up of filmmaking in the Hollywood form due to intensive criticism, distaste and hate from fans and the like. Lucas is quoted as saying in 2012, "Why would I make any more movies, when everybody yells at you all the time and says what a terrible person you are?" Of course referring to the Star Wars films. We must remember George Lucas made the world of Star Wars. From a fan point of view, you treasure a franchise and might hold it dearly and want to shield it. We must remember most people don't like change. The new trilogy was a huge change. George Lucas is also a risk taker, which we should know from how he made risks in the original trilogy. But not necessarily a bad change, like so many believe in the new prequels. Sure, not everything is perfect about the prequels, even I could admit there are fewer oddities that aren't great. But some people, they bring up nitpick sort of things. George Lucas created Star Wars. It's his story, his vision, and his concept to tell, or at least it was before he sold the rights to Disney. Remember the main train of hate during his ownership of the franchise when he had creative rights? Well, this is what we're talking about. However, when you want to tell your story, but your new story differs from your old one, you can't please everyone, and after many years it's understandable to get tiresome from the hate and backlash from fans. Whether you dislike or like the prequel films, I want to hear your opinions and reasons why in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you liked the video, there are much more on this channel of similar taste. If you disagreed with the points I brought forward in the video, that's totally fine. Take to the comment section below to get the discussion started. If you want to see future videos like this or have any suggestions, please help out the channel by subscribing so you don't miss another video. Thanks for watching.